Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's just about springtime here in Saskatchewan, so I figured maybe it's about time we got this thing into my car, and this thing, and maybe even this thing. So I'm going to film this over the course of a few days, but we're hopefully going to get this subwoofer in and working in one video. Got all my stuff laid out here for you. Here's the not so good quality wood I bought for the enclosure, because I gotta go what I can find locally, which isn't much. I've still got a little bit of this good quality Russian birch for bracing. That'll help with the quality of this wood. Got some angle brackets for mounting the box to the car, some hardware. Got a nice big 16 gauge steel plate for maybe making an amp plate. Got an angle iron for, well, that probably won't work very well to bend this stuff, but who knows. Yeah, probably should have got a bending brake for that, but this was cheaper. And I wasn't about to buy a bending brake just for one project, mind you, so there's that to consider. I've got some black paint here for the enclosure once it's done. And I've got some PL Premium for the construction of the enclosure. And just a quick word about PL Premium here. This is construction adhesive. I came to know and really love this stuff when I was working on my tapped horns. See, when you build a tapped horn, it is absolutely critical to have all of the internal panels completely sealed. You cannot have any air leaks anywhere in the box. And since you're basically building a little maze in there, there's no way to go back in and re-seal any air leaks that you might find in there. So that's where PL Premium comes in. This is an extremely strong construction adhesive. I don't know if you guys watch any of the Mike Holmes shows, but they frequently use this stuff to sister up floor joists. And the reason I like it is because it works with the moisture in the air to cure, and as it cures, it expands. So if there are any air leaks, this stuff will take care of it. And I've got just a little tube for this project, but when it comes to building tapped horns, like the latest one I did, required 2 of the big ones of those things. Well, actually, maybe more like 1.5, but you get the idea. Tapped horns go through a lot of this, especially when they're big. Anyhow, you can use traditional wood glue. That's fine. It works. But I just love this stuff so much I use it for every speaker project now. So, yeah. Now, I promised you guys that I would show you how to test for DC offset, didn't I? So, how about we go out to the car, and I'll show you how to do that, and we're also going to take a look at what we're working with out there, try and figure out where to put the amp, and try to figure out how to mount the enclosure. Now, the plan is to use just about every last bit of this handy panel here for the enclosure. It's 16 millimeters thick, and this Russian birch is 18 millimeters, which, yeah, it would have been better to just go with this stuff, but getting this stuff requires a 2.5 hour trip to the nearest city in Alberta. You cannot buy this locally. And I don't think you can even get it in Swift Current, which is closer than the place in Alberta. So, rather than spending like $70 at today's gas prices just to go buy wood, and then spend like $80 to $100 to buy an 8-foot sheet of this stuff again, I just went with this cheaper stuff. It should hold up. So, yeah. I think that's about it for now. Let's get out to the car. Okay, so here we are at the car, taking a look at the storage compartment where you find all the audio goodies in the Q7. This is where the Bose subwoofer normally goes. I've got it removed right now. It's just right up here. Nice big plastic enclosure, tuned to 40 hertz, but we won't talk about that too much. Now, I promised I would show you how to check for DC offset. And right now I've got the audio system running. Let's see if I can put you down here somewhere so you can see what's going on. There we go. Now, I don't know if I can really explain too well what DC offset actually is. There's probably people who can do that a lot better than I can. But basically what we're looking for is a DC bias on the speaker outputs. Looking for about 6 volts DC or something like that. And if we find it, we can use that to turn on our kicker amp. Just trying to set this up so you can see the display a little better. Hopefully that works. So I've got the subwoofer connector right here. It's a 4-pin connector with only 2 spots occupied. So what we're going to do is we're going to check each one of these pins against the vehicle ground, not against each other. You won't find any DC voltage against each other, but we're looking for maybe 6 volts or so with respect to vehicle ground. I'm just trying to see if I can get this test probe in there somewhere. Okay, there we go. Now let's see what we got. And 5.77 volts about. So we'll check the other one. And I must not have a good connection there, which figures. Off the sugar today. First day without soda, so I hope I'm making sense to people. Not really getting much here. There may not be a DC offset on both of these terminals. Don't know for sure. Oh, there we go, 5.78. So I'm going to shut the ignition off now, and we're going to test again. We're going to see if there's anything present with the vehicle off. Okay, vehicle is off. So we'll just check her again. Still seeing some voltage there. That should have gone away once I powered her off. But maybe she's not all the way powered down yet. Let's wait a few minutes and then we'll check again. Okay, we're back. A few minutes later and it looks like she's just about done. We're at 247 or so millivolts and dropping. So yes, we can use DC offset to turn the kicker amp on. And fair disclosure, I already knew it would work. The reason I knew it would work is because other people have used that very amp with this very vehicle. So let me put my meter away here real quick. And we're just going to see what we've got to work with, if possible. Watch my gimbal give me problems now, but that's okay. There we go. Now we got zoomed out. So this is the storage bay. This is all we've got to work with. We've got from here up to about here, and that's all the space we've got for an enclosure. So let me get my measuring tape wherever I put it. I know it's here somewhere. Where did I hide it? Ah, there it is. This is fun one-handed, isn't it? So what we've got to deal with here, 6 inches. That's actually less space than I thought there would be. So, and you got to keep in mind there's this cover that fits right over top of here too, so we have to work around that as well. If I can just get my measuring device to cooperate. And it is clearly not doing so. Let's try this again. So yeah, 6 inches there. About the same there. And going all the way down, that's 8 inches down there. So what we're going to have to do is mount the woofer down firing, pointing that way. We can do that because there is clearly, cooperate gimbal, clearly an opening down there with which we can get the sound through to the rest of the vehicle. And I just hope I can build an enclosure small enough that this will work. Honestly, I'm a little nervous about that. I was hoping I'd have 7 inches here, and I don't. So yeah. But what we're going to do is we're going to come all the way out to here with the enclosure, because that's what the L7T needs. And let me just see what we've got to work with for length here. We'll do it backwards. So we've got about 16 inches or so, but we got to keep in mind that these seats come up and down. So what I am going to do is probably go off camera, take some measurements, maybe go back inside and figure out a cut list. Then tomorrow, when it's nice and warm, or supposed to be, I'll come out and do all my woodworking off camera, and then I'll pick back up with showing you how to build the enclosure using PL Premium, because you've got to have a plan put together for using that stuff. Anyway, oh yeah, before we do anything else, let's figure out where we're going to put the amp. Okay, so I'm back with the amp. I'm leaving it in the plastic for now, just to keep it a little safe. But the other installation I know about that used this amp had it slid right under here. And of course, as we can see, it does fit easily. However, that's not a cheap amp. That's about $600 to get this replaced. And apparently this little kicker amp runs a little warm. So I have to figure out whether or not I actually want the Bose amp to be heated up like that. And the other thing we got to keep in mind is we've got all these controls on this end of the amp that we have to have access to. And if I've got a subwoofer enclosure coming out this far, yeah, might be a little difficult to deal with that. So, where else can we put the amp? Well, this honestly looks like a good spot to me. If I can point you down so you can see this area right here. Fits real nice. Now I have to see if I can make this work, and if it doesn't interfere with the seat, that's one possibility. We could put it under this part over here, and I don't know if you can see it, we've actually got some studs back in there that maybe we can mount our metal plate to. And yeah, there's this other stud back in here. Can't really see it. Oh, there you can. And there's one right over here too that we can also use to mount that metal plate to. And I think I would rather just do this one screw down here. Now, as far as what originally goes here, there's this little plastic or styrofoam tool organizer that goes there that wastes a whole lot of space, and I will not be reusing that because of that. But yeah, I'm thinking this is a great spot to put the amp, and I'm going to take all these straps out too, because actually they're broken. And we won't talk about who did the breaking, but the guy holding the camera came out here one really cold morning and tried to get this stuff out and didn't do a very good job. So yeah, I'll take all these straps out and toss them in the house somewhere. Now, as far as mounting the enclosure, provided I can come up with some kind of a building plan for one and not have to go buy another subwoofer again, but we'll see. We've got this stud here, this one here, and these two here that we might be able to attach the enclosure to. At least I'm hoping. My angle brackets might be a little big for these two sections, but if I have to, I'll go get some more angle brackets. That's no problem. Anyway, so I'm going to shut you off now. I'm going to make sure all the ideas I have in mind will work. I'll take some more measurements. I'll come up with a cut list. Maybe get some wood cut. And then I'll be back. Okay, here we are. We've got a bunch of panels cut and we're ready to do some gluing and screwing. At least I hope we are. As you can see, I've pre-drilled all my holes already, and I've screwed every screw in preparation to do this. And the reason I've done this is, like I mentioned before, when you're using PL Premium, you have to have a plan. And let me just bring the PL over here real quick. There's a couple of things you want to keep in mind when you're using this stuff. And one of them has to do with this right here. Irritant. Yeah, you don't want to get this stuff on your hands, so glove up if you can. It's not too big of a deal if you do get some of this stuff where it doesn't belong, as long as you've got mineral spirits around to wash off your hands or your tools or whatever. But yeah, this stuff is real picky, so yeah, you got to get that stuff off if it goes anywhere you don't want it. Now, another thing to keep in mind with PL Premium is once you pop the seal in here and you start laying down your 1/4 inch bead like they tell you, you've got 20 minutes. That's all you've got. You've got 20 minutes to go in, get all your panels situated and screwed down and everything, and then it starts curing. And once it cures up, I'll show you another panel here. This is some scrap wood from back when I was building the tapped horns. This is cured PL Premium right here. This stuff does not come off. It's rock hard, and it's just on there. Once that's on, good luck getting your joint apart ever again, because it's not coming apart. So yeah, 20 minutes, get your panels all done, and that's all the time you've got, which can be real challenging for a tapped horn, let me tell you, especially a big one. Oh boy, I still don't know how I did that, but yeah, so I've got everything planned out here. Let me just set this driver baffle off to the side for a minute. That only goes on one way, so I don't know if you can see it too well here, but I've got some numbers written down on all these panels, according to which ones go on first and which go on next and whatnot. This is panel number 1. This goes on first. Like I said, all the screws have already been inserted in here. You can see them. So that's panel 1. Here's number 2. The brace is number 3. And I'm only going to be using 2 screws to hold this brace in, because that's all we're going to need. This side panel is number 4. And this side panel is number 5, with number 6 being the driver baffle. Now, this really is not the best wood to use, and I think I've mentioned that several times already. But as I also mentioned, I've been away from woodworking so long that I felt I had to use something that was at least kind of disposable if I screwed up, and I did screw up, but just on this one panel. I tried to freehand it with a circular saw, and this edge is about 5 millimeters off. That's no big deal to PL Premium, but yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go with the cheap stuff. Another reason being, I still don't know if this is going to fit. So if I have to redo my enclosure all over again, I'd rather just throw away the $20 handy panel than waste a whole bunch of really good Baltic birch or whatnot. So yeah, so let me shut you off real quick. I'm going to glove up. We'll pop the seal on the PL, and we'll just go ahead and get this done. Okay, I'm back and I'm gloved up. And just a couple more things before we get started with the PL. I decided to go ahead and draw some lines in here just so I can see exactly where to run the B to PL. So that's another thing you might want to consider doing. This is actually how I put the tapped horns together. I measured out where each panel was. I drew lines. I ran some screws in to basically guide my line of screws. Then I just went at it with the drill and just went zip, 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 zip all the way down and got as many screws in as I could. And as far as screws go, we are using these to put the panels on, or together. These are number 6 by 1.5, I think. And the reason I went with number 6 is because these are not really the world's widest panels, so if I were going with the good stuff, the 18mm Baltic birch, what I would use is probably number 8s, and I think that's what I used in the horns. But yeah, for mounting the driver, I've got a bunch of number 10s that I'll use. And I'll just show you real quick here. If you're using MDF, this is the kind of screw you want to use. It's a threaded cap screw. But because we're using plywood, regular wood screws are going to be fine. This is a number 10 by 1.5. Most of the driver mounting screws will be this stuff, but 2 of them will be these number 8s by 2 inch. And the reason for that is because they will be coming all the way down into this reinforcement. So yeah, that's why we're only doing 2 screws for the reinforcement. Okay, so I've only got so much time on the camera before it shuts off on me, so we better get this party moving. And I'm just realizing I forgot my scissors to cut this easier, so we're going to have to slice the nozzle with a utility knife, like so. There we go. And now, time for the fun. Here we go, popping the seal. Cue the music. Well, folks, there you have it. We're all done with the PL. Now I'm going to go around the outside. I'm going to get all this extra stuff off. And then I'm going to shut the camera off. Then we're going to come back in about maybe half an hour to an hour. And we're going to take a paint scraper. And we're just going to go along and take off anything that might be oozing out. And the reason you want to do that is because if you catch it early enough, you can use a paint scraper. If you don't catch it early enough, you got to go in with a chisel. So, yeah. So we're going to just clean up a little bit. Get all the excess off. Kind of smearing it everywhere, but that's okay because we're going to be painting this. And then after this, what I'll probably have to do is just throw out the rest of the PL Premium. You can keep PL Premium for a while if you stick a giant nail in the spout and seal it up real good with electrical tape. But I don't have a giant nail, so that's not going to happen. Just about done here. And like I said, what we should see is excess PL squeezing out of each seam. And if we see that, we know that we got a good seal. And we don't have to do any corrections or anything. This would have been a nice job for some shop towels if I had any, but I don't, so it is what it is. Now, because I got PL Premium on this cardboard here, I'm going to have to find a way to get this off the surface a bit. Somehow. I don't know how. We don't want to glue the new subwoofer to the cardboard, otherwise we won't be able to get it off again. But yeah, it appears everything went on successfully. I don't seem to have any air leaks at all, so that's always good. Man, I don't know what I did to my knee, but it is hurting right now. So yeah, I don't think we used too much of this stuff. Let me just check here. Yeah, we used maybe about a third of the tube. So that's fine, we'll be wasting 2/3, but hey, at least I didn't buy one of the big canisters. I would have been really wasting PL that way. But yeah, let me shut off the camera. I'll try and figure something out to get this off the surface of the table a little bit so nothing sticks to it. I'll get back with you in a little bit. Alright, we're back. It's about a half an hour later, and it appears that we really don't have too much going on with the PL squeezing out from the outside. It has been squeezing out from the inside, which is kind of what I was hoping would happen, because I don't really want to deal with it on the outside so much. If it's on the inside, we can just leave it be. On the outside, we got to scrape it off, like I said before. Now, few words that I forgot to mention before I shut you off and go paint this thing. When it comes to PL Premium, you have to have all your panels clean first. I did that off camera, but yeah, just go along with a damp rag, just wash it all down, make sure there's nothing to interfere with the PL Premium when it comes to curing. Let's see, what else did I forget? Oh yeah, major thanks to Kicker for this. I love that they're putting these templates in their shipping boxes. Really comes in handy, especially for these square jobs like this. I'm going to keep that template for now, because if I have to do the box over, I'm going to need it again. But so far, I'm happy. I haven't found one single air leak anywhere in this. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep coming back to it every half hour or so. I'll scrape off any PL that I find. And then once this is fully cured, which will take a full day, I will take this out back with this cardboard and I'll spray paint it black. And then we can finally start putting this thing into the car after, I don't know, how many months has it been since I ordered this stuff? At least a month. Anyway, yeah, that's the plan. We're going to get this painted up. I'll get started on wiring. I'll do the wiring on camera probably, but I might not. I do have to show you how to use ferrules and mount battery posts to my 4-gauge. So maybe we'll do that. Maybe we won't. I don't know. Anyhow, that's it for today. We've got us a box. I am very happy with it so far. There are no air leaks. So this should work, even if it's not the best wood. Now, one other thing I forgot to mention. This is one side good plywood. So what I've done is I've made sure the good side is facing in. And the reason for that is I really want the most stable layer possible facing the back of the driver. Now, when it comes to the outside, we could go around this with fiberglass and strengthen it up a bit, but I'm not going to do that. This should be fine as is, especially with that big 18mm plywood brace in there. So, yeah, I think that's about it for now. So I'm going to shut you off, let this cure, get her all painted up, and then we'll pick back up again another day for me and a couple of seconds for you. So before I show you guys the completed enclosure for the subwoofer, now that it's all been painted and set up and I've done test fitting in the car, I thought I'd show you my little amp plate I made first. As mentioned earlier, this is 16-gauge steel, and I've got a hole drilled here to catch one of those extra mounting studs in the car, and the amp itself is going to go right about here. The way I'm going to have this is this side of the amp is going to go towards the passenger side, and the reason for that is I found it's actually easier to get at these controls if they're facing the driver's side. So it's going to go in like that, and then there's going to be about this much space to adjust, and it should work just fine. Now, with that being said, let me go get the subwoofer box real quick. So here's the subwoofer enclosure. And I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things first. You'll notice I've got a couple of lag bolts here. Right there and there. And the reason for that is, one, I had to use something to hold this off the floor of the container there, just to try and figure out whether or not I'd actually have enough space to run the driver I wanted to run in here. And for another thing, that L7T is heavy, so because I'm going to use angle brackets to hold this to the car, I figured it's probably best if I have a couple of these lag bolts here to just take the weight off of the angle brackets. As far as angle brackets go, I've got a couple installed already, and the reason I got those installed already is that there used to be a third lag bolt here that came way up out of the enclosure. But this one isn't necessary because all the weight's going to be way over here. So what I did was I took that one out after I did my test fit and then put another bolt in there just to sort of keep it sealed up. But anyhow, these angle brackets have already been pre-installed and they engage the mounting points in the car just fine. You can see here that I had to cut this one short in order to enable me to engage the stud. because otherwise there's a trim panel that comes up about right here, and it wouldn't fit otherwise. Now as far as the other side goes, I actually had to go back to the hardware store where I bought this big guy here. I actually had a couple of 4-inch angle brackets I was going to use to hold this one, much like on that side, but I found that the 4-inchers don't fit. Like the 4-inchers only come up about as far as maybe halfway through the initial baffle area here. So I had to go back and get this 6-inch one, and I cut it down so it would fit, and this should work. But yeah, since there's only going to be one angle bracket on this side, that's another good reason to keep these lag bolts in place. And fortunately, I can tell you from my test fitting that this will work. I've had to offset the driver over here. I might have mentioned that before, or I might not have. Hard to say, because this is taking me weeks and weeks and weeks to get done. But yeah, I had to offset the driver over here, because if I ran it over here, you can see just how little space there is from my angle brackets. I wouldn't have had room for driver excursion with the driver over here or in the middle, so it had to come as far over as possible. So, what is the plan now? Well, the plan now is to install the driver and also install this here terminal cup. And the other plan, if I can step around my tripod here, is to stuff it full of this. And the reason I'm doing that is because the enclosure volume is about 0.75 cubic feet on this, which is just a little bit light for what I would like to do with this. So yeah, we're going to stuff this full of polyfill, get the terminals in, and I'll get it wired up. And I'll probably do all that off camera. What I'm using for wiring is this here 12 gauge hookup wire. You really do not need anything fancy for this. And in fact, I would say 12 gauge is overkill for this. 14 would work. But yeah, you really don't need any fancy type speaker wire for this kind of a thing. I've been using hookup wire in all my car subwoofer installations ever since I don't know when, and I'm not going to stop now because I've got a bunch of this old 12 gauge hookup wire to use. And use it I shall, because I don't want to spend any more money on this. I've spent enough. Now, you might have noticed earlier that the PL Premium I went with isn't quite the same as what I used for the tapped horns. And the reason for that is I decided to try the Fast Grab stuff, which is kind of a gray color. And I believe the PL Premium Max is also that same gray color. See, there's 3 different versions of PL Premium you can get. There's the kind I used on the horns, which works well enough. There's this Fast Grab stuff, and then there's the PL Premium Max, which is even stronger. But this will do just fine. PL is fully cured now. I can't even get a fingernail on it now, so it's going to hold. So, with that being said, I'm going to get the driver installed, and then I'll come back later to show you how it looks. And just like that, folks, we have a subwoofer. At least, we hope we have a subwoofer. Now, I didn't use the power tools on most of these, but I did use the drill on these two just because they're 2 inches long, and I didn't want to break my wrist trying to get those in. But for these, I went manual only. The reason I did that is because when I'm running screws into plywood like this, I like to be able to feel how much torque I'm putting on these screws. Because you don't want to over tighten them, especially with a driver as heavy as this guy is. So yeah, it's all done and ready to go in the car, pretty much. I've just got wiring stuff to do now for the power to the amp and the ground to the amp, and that's probably about it at this point. Feels like it's taken forever to get to this point, but just some advice before we get on to some wiring stuff. After you get to this point, it's always a half decent idea to put your multimeter on this and just measure the resistance. You won't get your impedance that way, but DC resistance will get you close enough to see if you wired things properly. And I've got just a little over 1 ohm DC resistance here, so that's exactly what we want to see. And oh, one other thing. Before you get to this point, in fact, the second you take your driver out of the packaging, what you should do is you should check each voice coil just to make sure they're both in good working order, and then check the voice coils against the basket, because you don't want to find out the hard way that this was shorting to ground this whole time. I've seen videos on YouTube where people didn't do that and they ended up frying their amp because it was shorting to ground and they didn't realize. So just keep that in mind. Always check. So yeah, this is all done. I can put the decorative covers over these screws now so we can't see them. Not that I'd see them anyway in the car, but whatever. And then we're going to move on to some ferrule stuff now. So here we are getting ready to do some wiring. As you can see, I've got the Stinger amp kit from the previous video on the table now. We're going to use this all the way for the Kicker amp, I've decided, since it says in the documentation that this is absolutely fine for the amp in question. And since I'm not planning on adding any future amps, at least not right now, 8 gauge will do fine. I've decided not to mess with the 4 gauge at all. And the reason for that is, well, maybe we'll see once we get out in the car, but there's a very large terminal block where the battery is, on the battery positive, and I really don't want to deal with 4 gauge running into that, so I've decided to just go ahead and use the 8 gauge. Now I've taken this side out of the Stinger fuse holder, and I just wanted to show you exactly why I like ferrules. I don't know if you can see that, but I just pulled it straight out and look at these strands just everywhere. This is why I like ferrules. And since I'm going with the 8 gauge all the way, and I've only got 3 ferrules, I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to use all 3 on the power wire. So I'm going to put one here, and there's going to be one here, and then there's going to be one all the way at the other end, and I can't really do much about the other end yet because I need to get it in the car just to see how long I have to make it first. So, one thing I wanted to let you know about is that all 4 of these screws were loose when I took the cover off. So just check on these just to make sure that they're all tight before you actually go ahead and do anything. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take this end of the wire out, and we're going to see just how bad this end is too. I'll get the phone to jump in real close here if I can. It's not cooperating. Come on, macro mode. There we go. Yeah, you can actually see we've got broken strands in this one. So, yeah, Stinger, not so good. Please start throwing ferrules in with these kits because they're very much appreciated by yours truly. So what we're going to do first is we're going to cut off the end here that was inside there. And we're going to wish we had a bigger tool for this, but we don't. Or do we? Yes, we do. 1 second. All right, here we go. That'll do the job. I'd be surprised if it didn't. Perfect. Just like that. Now, as I mentioned before, we don't want any issues with the damaging the strands here, so we're going to have to be very careful with the stripping. And when you strip for a ferrule, you want the wire to come out just a little bit past the tip. So that's what we're going to do. Or at least that's what I'm going to try to do. Presto, one stripped wire. Now we got to find a way to get this into this without damaging any strands, and I have to do this off camera as well, so sorry about that. It's got to be done. And there we go. One ferrule on the wire. Now we're going to take our ferrule crimper. I've already set this up ahead of time. There's this knob here you adjust for the different wire gauges. See if I can get close enough to show you the markings on it. So you can see 10, 4 to 6, 0.25 to 2.5, and these are square millimeters, that measurement. And you can look up online to see what that conforms to as to American wire gauge if you need to. But this one's already set, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our ferrule, stick it right up in there, and we're going to squeeze the crimper down until it releases. It's a ratcheting style crimper, so here we go. And there we go. Just like that. Robert's your mother's brother. One ferrule installed. Now you want to give these a pull test just to make sure they don't come out, and this is not coming out, so it's perfect. So I'll just give this a little test fit and we'll see how well it fits in there. And it fits in there just perfect. Couldn't ask for better. Now when I tighten this down, it'll flatten out. And it'll be totally solid. You won't be able to get that wire out for nothing now. Which is exactly what we want. I'll just loosen this up again so you can see what happens. There you go. You can see how it just sort of flattened in the ferrule, and it's kept all the wires right where they need to be. This is much, much better than using bare wire. Now, how am I planning to handle the negative wire since I don't have enough ferrules for it? Well, I've thought about that, and I'm just going to go ahead and tin it with solder. That's about the only thing we really need to do for that one. I would prefer to use a ferrule, but solder is going to be perfectly fine on a negative on that side, so I just want the ferrules on the power wire just to be sure the power wire goes nowhere. Now where's my other ferrules? I just got to do this other one. Maybe I'll try and do this one on camera. I'll probably damage something in the process. This is really hard to do. On camera, I must say. Like I said, you don't want to cut all the way down into the strands. You just want to get through the insulation, and that just about went all the way through. So we must be more careful. Self. Okay, that should just about do it. There we go. Now I'm going to give this just a little bit of a twist so I can get it into the ferrule just a bit easier. And hopefully it goes in nice and easy. And there we go. We got another one on. We grab our crimping tool, same as before. And there she goes. Do another pull test, and she's not going nowhere. Or not going anywhere. Whatever. Now, if I can just run this screw out enough to get the ferrule in there, we can tighten this one down too. There we go. Now all we got to do is go out into the car and install the power wire, and install the negative wire, and we should be all set. There we go. Nice professional looking job there. I say professional looking because I'm hardly ever a professional at anything else, so that's it for that. So before we go out to the car and finally finish this little subwoofer job I've got going on here, I thought maybe you guys might want to have a look at the actual factory sub, and we'll just see how it's put together. How about that? This video is taking about a month to get done, but let's just delay it some more. Okay, so this is the Bose subwoofer, and it looks like what we've got going on here is we've got a little slot load design for the front of the driver. And meanwhile, around the other side, there's our port for the back side of the driver, which, as mentioned before, is about 40 hertz. So, I've already got the screws pulled out of here, so we're going to take a look at this driver real quick. Let's see, we've got 6 Torx T20s holding this plate on, and this also holds the driver in. Pay no attention to my dirty table here. I know it's cluttered and full of mess, but it is what it is. And there's the Bose driver right there. About an 8-incher, looks like. Now what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to be able to pop this connector off the enclosure so I can modify the harness to easily plug into here. That way I don't have to go doctoring the harness in the car or something. Not doctoring the TARDIS, although I do love me some KLF. I said doctoring the harness. So, well, I'm going to have that song stuck in my head today for the rest of the day now, but yeah, that's more bragging than complaining. I love KLF. Anyway, let's pull this out. This looks like it's actually fairly similar in construction to the subwoofer that was in my 04 Pacifica. So let's just see for sure. I'll try and do this one-handed. And this is impossible. I gotta steady the driver here and try to hold it in place so I don't damage it. Hope I'm not swinging you around too much here. Okay, so here's the driver itself. Yes, this is actually really well built, I think. Has a decent magnet on it. Looks like our connections here are clipped on rather than soldered, which is good for me, possibly. So maybe I can adapt that. But you know what's kind of crazy to me? Even though this is the same size driver as what was in the 04 Pacifica, the 04 Pacifica had extension down to 30 hertz, actually even a little bit below that. And the reason the Pacifica could do that and this one can't is because the Pacifica was acoustic suspension, fully sealed. Gave up a little bit of SPL doing that, but got extension out of it. So this one gives you SPL, but it gives you no extension. So that's kind of my experience with Bose all these years. They could be capable of so much, but instead they spend millions of dollars coming up with these weird enclosure designs just so they can make a 50-cent driver sound better. Although, admittedly, this is a much better driver than I'm used to seeing from Bose. So, yeah. Once I get that 12-inch kicker in there, I think it'll be a night and day difference. So, let me just get into this. I'll see if I can get this connector off and build my signal wire harness using the kicker thingamajigger here. And we'll hopefully finally get this project done after about a month. Good Lord. I wish the weather would stop acting like a crazy person and stop with the blizzards every once a week or so. We had that one blizzard come through about a week ago, knocked out the power for 12 hours, ice storms, power poles down everywhere. Had to stop me in my tracks for another whole week, so I hope the weather's done with that kind of crap now, because I want to get this finished. Anyway, that's enough complaining. See you out at the car. So we're here out at the car looking down at the battery, and if you're wondering where the battery is on an 18Q7, it's just right here in front of the passenger seat beneath an access panel. Easy to get to. Anyway, I'm just getting my power wire done here, and I just wanted to show you where I've got it connected. Right down there. I wanted an unfused connection. Every other one here is fused. This one goes right here. I'll be reattaching that in a second. But just one thing I wanted to make you aware of. If you're working on one of these, when you go to reconnect the battery negative, Audi wants you to put this on first and then reconnect this afterwards. Reason being, this is for battery management, I guess. So I don't know if it would actually hurt anything to leave this connected, but I don't want to give them an excuse to deny me any warranty coverage, so that's what I'm doing. I'm doing it exactly the way they tell me to. And moving back over here, if you see this connector, it just snaps down over top of the positive here. And then this cover goes on top of there. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to finish playing with the battery stuff. I'm going to finish getting my wire run and dealing with all these irritating little spring clips that Audi gives you. And then before too long, I'll hopefully show you what's going on in the back there. Right now I can't, because I unplugged the power to the vehicle and now I can't get the lift gate open. So let me finish this up and I'll get back with you as soon as I can. Well folks, there it is. You'll have to pardon the wind because I've got the lift gate open here and it's a windy day, but everything's installed. The box fits fine, the amp fits fine, but Houston, we have a big problem. This amp is dead. It made noise for a little bit during the key setup, but it doesn't do nothing anymore. All I get is the power, or the protection LED flashing. I don't get power anymore. So, unfortunately, this is going to have to end right here, because I'm going to have to make some calls and see if I can't get a replacement for this amp. And yeah, I'm disappointed because it took an awful long time to get to this point and an awful lot of tools, and those panels were a bear to get dealt with. Power wire took forever to run, but yeah, we've got no amps, so the sub isn't going to do anything. So folks, I could be the guy who edits out all of his mistakes and pretends nothing happened, but I'm not that kind of guy. Important to realize when you're doing an amp install like this and subwoofer install, if something doesn't work right away, don't give up. You might be missing something real obvious, and in this case, we had a bad ground. I took the amp inside, bench tested it with an old power supply, and it came on just fine. So what I did was I came back out to the car here, I got this temporary 12 gauge wire, and I ran a new ground. I tried that stud down in there, and the amp worked fine after that. It was too loud because I'd been messing around with the gains trying to troubleshoot my issue, but it worked. So what I did was I cut the end off that I tinned, stripped a new wire, and then I tried it again and it still didn't work. So what ended up being the problem was the stud I was originally attaching to before, which is down underneath the enclosure. This one works. So, how about I show you how well it works? Okay, here we go. I've got some free YouTube tracks queued up from the content library, so hopefully we won't get in any trouble with this. So, let's see what we can find here. So there you have it, folks. I guess we got her working. Finally! 6 o'clock at night. Well, 6:25. You can see by the clock on the display there. But I guess I'm happy. At long last, I have real extension in this car. I've got rattles too, but we'll have to deal with that another day. Right now, I just want to go inside and rest. So I'll see you in the next video. Take care.